Adam White with Front Office Sports here with Eric Avar, VP of Design for Nike, talking Nike Adapt BB. 3 years in the making, right? It's probably good to get to this point.
It is. It's definitely been a journey. It's been a challenge, but it's been super exciting also.
And I know there's probably been a lot of challenges along the way, right? You were Nike designer number 15. Now there's 800 in the company, right?
Yeah.
Like what is
15-ish? Yeah.
15-ish.
Yeah.
We'll call it
give
15.
or take. Yep.
You know, what is that? What was that like evolution just been for yourself as you know an employee of Nike and just the whole design department with inside of Nike?
You know, on one hand, there's been a massive amount of change. You know, just how big Nike has gotten, how many designers and experts that we have. But you know, one thing that's always remained consistent is just the design process and working with athletes, listening to the voice of the athlete, and solving problems for athletes. So as you know, technology, materials, new methods of make and manufacturing all change and evolve. That fundamental process of working with athletes is always stays the same, and that's what drives us.
And I know one of your guys' biggest athletes and yours personally is Kobe, right?
Sure.
So how much was designing this easier than working with Kobe?
Oh man. Kobe's amazing, and he's definitely one of the more creative athletes that we've worked with, and also the most challenging. So maybe working with him for the better part of 15 years has helped us all work on products like this. And we've certainly taken a lot of learnings from all athletes that we've worked with, and athletes at all levels. So it was almost kind of an athlete collective, if you will, that gave insight and feedback on this product and the evolution of this product.
And early on, what was that insight and feedback, and how did you kind of tinker it to what you got here in front of us, right?
It was such a collaborative back and forth process between the designers working on the actual shoe, and the designers and engineers working on the motor and the mechanism and the brain of the shoe. And we quickly realized that we could not design those components independently of one another, that we had to design them simultaneously as a holistic system and a holistic product. Any change that we would make to the shoe design would affect the motor design and vice versa. So we've lost count a long time ago of how many prototypes and iterations that we've gone through. So every step of the way, we've had athlete feedback of telling us what was working or what wasn't working, and we were just constantly refining to get to this point.
Now, how many of those iterations do you have sitting in your office in terms of like, here's how?
Oh yeah, no, we've archived. I think there's a whole wing, in our storage unit dedicated to archiving of the prototypes for this shoe. It's no one office would contain all those. Yeah,
that's the fun part though.
Yes.
But like when you talk about inspiration and design, right? It's a little bit different, but similar to what most of your low-top basketball shoes look like. Where'd you take some design from? Was there anything in nature that you kind of looked at and said, this is kind of what we're doing, or how did you come about and build out this is what the Adapt was going to look like?
Sure. Well, it always starts with the classic adage that form follows function, and this iterative, collaborative design process back and forth between designers and engineers. So, that dictated a lot of, the overall form of the product. And then using a new lace and creating a new lace architecture and system, and using new materials, this quad fit material, all of these things came together as as a holistic design from a performance standpoint. Then from an overall aesthetic standpoint, it's really important that products have a point of inspiration. They have a story that's embedded into the product, especially a product like this, which is so technical and advanced. We wanted to make it simple, approachable, and have a sense of mystery or magic to it, and for it to be fun. So, for me personally, I usually pull a lot of inspiration from nature. I believe nature solves so many of our problems, and if you really look at the processes and the evolution of nature, there's so much to be gleaned from that. So we pulled from nature a little bit, just the classic metaphor of a butterfly. So we incorporated that into the product, and there's a little swoosh, in the wing there. And that was, that was part of the story. It just it was a metaphor to represent change and adaptation that we thought was, relevant for the product. And you can see that in some of the design of, how the swoosh tails off. And then even the swoosh within the swoosh was meant to represent this fusion, this balance between what it means to be human and have product that works with the human body, and then also the integration of new technology. So those were some of the subtle design inspirations that we built into the shoe.
I'd say it's a pretty sweet way to go about it. Now for you, in terms of just, I would say even telling the overall story of the shoe, right? Is that something that when you're first hitting that whiteboard, you're like, okay, so this is the story of the shoe. It's more than just a shoe, right? Like you mentioned, there's something like in behind it, there's a human element to it.
Yes, absolutely. And, I think some of the best products have a deeper story behind it. And, so I just shared one story with you, but there's also, it's a collective of a number of stories, pulling from what, Tinker Hatfield had done on the original HyperAdapt 1.0, going all the way back to the original mag. So there were a lot of stories that came, together. But, probably the dominant one on this was this notion of metamorphosis or change.
Like, did that butterfly come to you when you were in Portland, or is that something that was a kind of a group effort?
No, I think it's a group effort. I remember even sharing some images with Mark Parker, our CEO of Butterfly, and he was sending me some images, pictures that he actually took of butterflies. So at Nike, it's a very collaborative process, which is really amazing. And you get to work with a lot of amazing people, and you get a lot of amazing points of input to pull from and help with the overall functional design and also the aesthetic and the story design of the product.
Now you're talking about the metamorphosis of the shoe, but how about the metamorphosis of the company, right? Like this is a whole different company. I know we mentioned that you started off early on in the evolution, but for you, as you've seen the caterpillar grow into the butterfly, just as the Nike side of things, what's that been like, and where do you see the Adapt fitting into the overall metamorphosis of the company going forward?
Oh yeah, I hadn't really thought about it that way. That's a great question. I think, like we said, even starting 28 years ago when I started, and going all the way back to Bowerman, working with athletes, it was always about working with athletes and solving problems for athletes. And I think that will always be the driving force behind what we do. But as technology and material technology and manufacturing technology, advances, we'll just be incorporating and taking use of, making use of all those new technologies, but always coming back to solving problems for athletes. Having some fun, creating a little sense of, mystery or magic with our product, trying to give our product, a little deeper soul of, what it means to be human, because it is an extension of, the human body. So, I just think through the advancement of technology and materials, Nike is going to continue to, evolve constantly.
Technology has it made the job harder or easier or more fun?
Probably all of that. Yeah, quite honestly. At any given moment, it might be more of a challenge, but it creates more opportunities. And, any challenge is ultimately exciting. It's a problem to solve. And I think that inspires a lot of designers and engineers.
So 3 to 5 years from now, what makes Adapt a success in your mind? Even a year from now?
Yeah, even a year, from that, just even with the camp that we had back in August, where we had Jason and a number of other, NBA and WNBA players, and just to see the product used at that level, and see the reaction and interaction of those athletes was really cool and exciting. So we're hoping that that's just going to continue with professional athletes, but kids and athletes of all ages and all abilities.